As most of you know by now, Tucker Carlson interviewed Nick Fuentes last week. And the interview was 2 hours long. And they went over things like Nick's upbringing, his position on Israel and the neocons, his feud with Joe Kent, and his positions on the current state of men in the 21st century with the rise of AI, porn, substance abuse, nihilism. And from my perspective, I thought the interview was excellent, actually. And I wish they would have gone more into Trump and the DOJ and what DHS is doing right now. I wish they would have gone more into Vance, into Iran, immigration policy, mass migration. But for one reason or another, they chose not to. Either way, though, I enjoyed the interview thoroughly. And it seemed like the consensus regarding this interview was overwhelmingly positive based on the comments, the dislike to like ratio. However, that wasn't the case on Twitter. And all of that changed, this positive reception, all of that changed from positive to negative, actually, very negative, in a span of 48 hours. And it seemed like Twitter was in an uproar, an all-out war over this interview. Which is strange because I thought the interview was benign. I thought the interview was rather tame. You know, they weren't going into crazy conspiracies about JFK or 9/11 or the USS Liberty. They didn't even talk about that. Anything relating to, Jewry. I mean, maybe they talked about that briefly, but no, this interview was tame if you actually go and watch it. So this kind of organized, coordinated effort to rebrand this interview as Nazi propaganda, it's very odd. And one has to ask themselves, what is this about? Who is doing this? Who is funding this? Is this coordinated? Is this an intelligence operation? Who knows? But the differences, the discrepancy in the reaction between what we saw on YouTube and Twitter, it was night and day. Very odd stuff. Anyways, that's besides the point. But what we saw, and this is important, was major figures like Dinesh D'Souza, James Lindsay, Mark Levin, Josh Hammer, all the usual suspects, Brandon Tatum, aka Officer Tatum. They're calling him Officer Talmud now. It's kind of funny. And various politicians like Randy Fine, Ted Cruz, they all came out and condemned Tucker for this interview. They said he was platforming a neo-Nazi. They said he was platforming white supremacy. They said he was platforming anti-Semitism. All the usual accusations. And of course, the whole idea here is that Tucker somehow is laundering this evil anti-Semite. He's platforming him. That's the word they like to use now. He's platforming him while providing no pushback on his ideas. And they're calling Nick an anti-Semite, a racist, a homophobe, hateful, all the rest of it. But what's so ironic about this is just how eerily similar this response was to the tactics that the left used to use on us. In 2020, the left was celebrating, or 2021, the left was celebrating when we were getting deplatformed. The left was celebrating when Trump got deplatformed on X. They were celebrating when Jordan Peterson got deplatformed. They were celebrating when Babylon Bee got kicked off of Twitter. This is what the left was doing. They said Jordan Peterson was a Western chauvinist, that he was a racist, a xenophobe, a sexist, all the usual accusations. And to turn around in 2025 and use those exact same tactics on people who are on your side, albeit tenuously, was never going to work. Obviously, that's just obvious. That was obviously never a successful game plan. And that leaves us with where we are right now. So, of course, the America First right responded. They punched back correctly, actually. And they said the Zionist right was engaging in these same kinds of cancel culture tactics that were so prevalent 4 years ago. And, of course, what's being said now, what's being argued, is that this isn't actually canceling. This is drawing lines. This is drawing boundaries. That's what they're saying. That's what the Zionist right is saying. We're drawing boundaries. We're looking for moral clarity. We're drawing lines in the sand. You can't platform people and not push them back. And, there's some merit to this idea. But it seemed like any kind of good faith engagement was completely off the table. Now, what is that about? Why is that? Why is it that the people who were so pro marketplace of ideas, we're going to battle it out in the marketplace of ideas, are now calling for someone to be canceled from the conservative movement? I find that very weird. They try to do it to the director of the Heritage Foundation. When he came out and defended Tucker Carlson, they said, he's a Nazi. He's an anti-Semite. He needs to be deplatformed. He should be fired. It seems as if there's this big contingent group of people who are organizing this effort to prevent any criticism of Israel from the right wing by calling them neo-Nazis and anti-Semites. That's the game plan. It's the same thing the left was doing. It's no different. So, of course, the America First left, or the America First right, rather, responded, called this out, and now we have Ben Shapiro, household conservative, household name, major Zionist, coming out swinging against Tucker and Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens. And this is very interesting. Ben Shapiro, Zionist Jew, been a major political commentator on the right wing for some time now, came out and criticized Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens for laundering anti-Semitism into the mainstream. And so yesterday he released a video, and we're actually going to get into that right now. So Monday, Ben Shapiro released a 40-minute video, and it was full of several scathing allegations and accusations regarding the character of Tucker and Nick. And the video that he released was split about 70-30, mostly containing short 30, 45-second clips of things that Tucker and Nick have said over the years. Very conspiratorial or objectionable things that either of them have said over the past, 5 to 10 years. Now, Ben added minimal commentary regarding the clips that he chose to incorporate, indicating, at least from my perspective, his belief that these clips were self-evident, that in and of themselves, in these clips, were confessions of the immorality of the people who said those things, that because these clips are just clips of things that they've said, that automatically serves as proof that they are evil people. And Ben didn't really go in depth to support why that was the case, but he did provide the clips. And all of these clips were supposed to indicate that Tucker is crazy, deranged, an anti-Semite, that Nick is evil, hateful, racist, everything else. And this is creating a huge fallout and potentially destruction of the entire right-wing coalition. I'm going to play this clip from Ben Shapiro. It's about 3 to 4 minutes long, and it's him giving his explanation as to why he takes umbrage with Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes. Play the clip.
We're going to cover one topic in depth. That topic is, I think, the most important thing happening in the country. It was a hot topic last week, but I wanted to take some time to really gather my thoughts and speak on it in coherent fashion, holistic fashion. That topic is the fragmentation of the political right. That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes. They call themselves the Groypers. They are white supremacists. They hate women, Jews, Hindus, many types of Christians, brown people of a wide variety of backgrounds, blacks, America's foreign policy, and America's Constitution. They admire Hitler and Stalin. And that splinter faction is now being facilitated and normalized within the mainstream Republican Party. The main agent in that normalization is Tucker Carlson, who is an intellectual coward, a dishonest interlocutor, and a terrible friend. And Tucker Carlson last week was aided, abetted, celebrated for normalizing Nazism within the Republican Party by the mainstay organization of the traditional right, the Heritage Foundation. Now, before we explain what's been happening, let's make one thing clear. This is not about free speech or cancellation. It was never about free speech or cancellation. Free speech has a definition: the right to speak free of governmental coercion. I believe in it, of course. I've always defended it. Criticism of bad speech is, in fact, just a form of free speech. Cancellation also has a definition: the banning of particular people, including people like Nick Fuentes, from platforms like X or Facebook. I believe that Nick Fuentes is odious and despicable, but I've never called for his cancellation, and in fact, I've called for his restoration to those services, despite the fact that I think he's odious and despicable. It is not cancellation to draw moral lines between viewpoints. In fact, we used to call that one of the key aspects of conservatism. It is not cancellation to refuse to signal boost Hitler supporters like Nick Fuentes. It is not cancellation to criticize Tucker Carlson for rhetorically fluffing Nick Fuentes and other anti-American crackpots. It's not cancellation if you urge others to stop promoting those who rhetorically fluff Nazi apologists. Now, as I mentioned, last week, Tucker Carlson had on Nick Fuentes. Fuentes is a 27-year-old man who's dubbed himself the leader of a movement called the Groypers. He has a large audience of alienated young white men in particular, and he's earned increased media attention over the course of the past few years, especially over the last year. You think that if you watch the interview, because Tucker Carlson decided that it was important not only to host Fuentes, but to smooth over his views, water them down, and make them far more palatable to a normal audience. As we'll discuss in a bit, this is what Tucker Carlson does for a living. But back to Nick Fuentes. To understand just what Tucker did here, we must actually examine what Nick Fuentes says on his show, and has said for almost a decade, because he was asked precisely 0 questions about any of what you're about to see by Tucker Carlson. Nick Fuentes says women want to be raped.
A lot of women want to be raped, and when I say raped, I mean like, that sounds bad when I say it like that, but there's like a lot of women that really want a guy to beat the shit out of them. But also they have to pretend, but part of it is they have to pretend like they don't.
Nick Fuentes says that his followers should kill, rape, and die in his name.
Raise your right hand. All right, everybody raise your right hand. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I will kill, rape, and die for Nicholas J. Fuentes.
Nick Fuentes says that women are whores who shouldn't be in politics.
I will continue my crusade against women in politics. It's always like this, and it's so ironic. Women are like, I don't like, when you say, I like it, you have to affect the face. When you say to repeal the 19th Amendment, that offends me. That hurts my feelings. It's like, have you ever stopped and considered that maybe if you get offended, there's such a strong emotional reaction to political opinions you disagree with across the board. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you shouldn't be making political decisions. I'm not attacking women. I'm attacking whores. You have no problems, right? I'm attacking whores. I'm attacking sluts, stupid, dirty bitches.
Nick Fuentes says that Jim Crow was actually better for black people.
It was better for them too, number one, but number two, who cares? Who cares? You know, enough with the Jim Crow stuff. Who cares? Oh, to drink out of a different water fountain.
So there's a lot to unpack there just in that short clip that I showed you guys. And I want to make it clear, I'm not an apologist for any of these people. I'm not an apologist for Nick or Ben or Tucker. I have criticisms of all three. Here's what I'll say about the things that Shapiro said in that clip, though. For one, it is true if you're Tucker Carlson and you're this major figure in right-wing politics, you're almost like a gatekeeper. It is incumbent upon you, if you're going to attack someone like Ted Cruz for neocon foreign policy, for not knowing the population or demographics of Iran, that you push back equally as hard against somebody like Nick, who has said, I mean, obviously deplorable things over the past 10 years about Jews and black people and immigrants and women. You get the idea. And not in a way where you tone police the guy, but at least bring it up, even about the things he said about Charlie Kirk serving the devil and being a fake Christian. I mean, we're not even going to mention that at all. I mean, Charlie Kirk died not even 2 months ago. And his biggest adversary is now being hosted on the biggest political commentator's platform in America. And you're not even going to push back slightly on the things that he said about your friend. So there's obviously grounds for scrutiny on that. I think that is totally fair criticism of Tucker. And with Nick, I mean, you know, obviously, I mean, Ben Shapiro said he hates blacks, Jews, Hindus, women, you know, a variety of different people, a variety of brown people of different backgrounds, all kinds of Christians. He supports Hitler and Stalin. And there's a lot of truth in that. But I do think, like, if you're Ben, at this point, it should be very clear. You know, this strategy of taking a 30 or 45-second clip of something somebody said from several years ago is enough to dismantle his movement. You're wrong. If Nick's objectionable statements over the years were enough to discredit him, he wouldn't be the second or first biggest political commentator in the country, depending on where you put Tucker. You have to actually refute his ideas and communicate why yours are superior. I mean, isn't that the whole idea of conservatism, the marketplace of ideas? Smearing people just makes you look weak. And everybody is aware that Nick has said deplorable things over the years. I mean, even he would admit that. But if you don't argue the substance of his ideas and you don't argue, the merit of his takes on Israel, race, immigration, whatever, then you won't win the argument. You have to address the Judeo-Christian, Israel, race, immigration stuff. I mean, those are his bread and butter issues. His opinions on those things are opinions that are widely shared. Obviously, these ideas, these opinions transcend, his most controversial statements. So this format of trying to, take someone down rather than refuting their ideas, but smearing their character, it's weak. And that has to stop. And to say that this is drawing moral lines in the sand, it's just not true. That's not drawing moral lines in the sand. That's attacking people's character, assassinating their image, and everybody's tired of it. This is what it comes down to. Saying things like Tucker Carlson is an intellectual coward, a dishonest interlocutor, a bad friend. Saying that all the Groypers are just alienated young men, alienated young white men. Trying to downplay the movement, dismiss it, trying to attack, the reputation and the character of Tucker Carlson. People are tired of it, man. I mean, this kind of like shaming tactic, people have been doing this for years. We're all tired of it. The constant shaming, the constant character assassination, we're done with it. You table our ideas, or rather, we'll table our ideas, you table yours, and we'll let the audience see which one is better, who has the better ideas. And I think Shapiro is afraid that he'll lose in a fair fight. So he has to resort to these kinds of dirty tactics. But this is what it comes down to. You have to have the courage and the honesty to just put it all out there. Put your ideas out there, mano a mano, and see who wins. Now, with that said, just because I think it is vital and important that we challenge each other's ideas in good faith to see whose ideas are more popular and are preferable moving forward to determine the future of America, that doesn't mean I'm just going to dismiss all of the things that Nick Fuentes has ever said. And this is a consistent theme that I run into with his followers. And I've engaged with many of Fuentes' followers on Twitter. These people go hard for this guy. I mean, they are the biggest apologists I've ever seen in my life. Nick Fuentes can do no wrong to these people. So that kind of cultish mentality, it's strange. But I will say, I agree with many of the things that Nick Fuentes said about this Judeo-Christian myth, immigration, the influence that Israel has over our country, our lack of sovereignty, and even some of his takes on race. There's things that I agree with the guy on, but that doesn't mean I'm willing to forego or dismiss all of the controversial statements. I mean, objectively controversial statements that he has said. I mean, he has said a lot of things that we just have to talk about. We have to address. We got to get some clarification. We got to get some, a mea culpa at the very minimum from Nick before we fully trust him and embrace him and can believe that he is a good faith interlocutor, because a demonstration of willingness to recant some of the things that he has said in the past would be a display, a demonstration that, okay, this is a change, this is a transformation, we can trust this guy now. I think on some level, asking for that, or at least broaching that subject, is the right thing to do. So I'm not going to dismiss all the things that he has ever said just because I don't like the way Ben Shapiro is going about this. But with that said, I'm going to play the second clip from Ben Shapiro, let him finish out his argument, and then we'll respond.
There's one other element here that's even darker if possible. Tucker Carlson preys on the friendship he proclaims with others, and then he knifes them directly between the shoulder blades when convenient for him. Tucker Carlson is, in short, a terrible friend. Tucker Carlson was supposedly Charlie Kirk's friend. Charlie believed that Nick Fuentes was vermin. That's a direct quote. He believed that because Nick Fuentes dedicated his life to destroying Charlie Kirk and TPUSA from the inside. In fact, here's Nick Fuentes describing Charlie Kirk the month before Charlie was murdered.
Charlie Kirk cannot call himself a Christian anymore. Sorry, you forfeited that. I do not want to hear, and you cannot allow, Charlie Kirk to go to one more public event, one more question and answer, one more ask me anything, without being protested, without being shouted down, without being interrogated about this? This guy goes around from campus to campus in the most artificial and phony and fake way.
And here is Nick Fuentes describing how he destroyed TPUSA from the inside.
Whether he chooses to confront me or not, whether he has dignity and honor or not, it's just a matter of time. My ideas are already there. I've already impregnated your organization. I took Turning Point USA and I fucked it. I took your organization, I took your baby, Turning Point USA, and I fucked it. And I've been fucking it. And that's why it's filled with groypers. That's why your whole crew, that's why the people around you, that's why your chapter presidents, that's why your attendees, they're all groypers.
And here's Nick Fuentes calling Charlie Kirk unpatriotic and talking about how he's a retarded idiot and saying all firepower should be focused on Charlie Kirk.
I think a lot of people are starting to find out Charlie Kirk is not the patriot that he says he is. And so I look at what happened last night and I think to myself, this is totally a doable operation. You know, Charlie Kirk in the grand scheme of things is just some retarded idiot. The dog is terrified. I had to go upstairs and reassure him because I'm screaming at my screen, calling Charlie Kirk a bitch and everything. The contrast could not be more clear. Charlie Kirk is a totally unexceptional human being, a moral struggle that's happening on the higher dimension, right? Which is Christ versus the devil. Who does Charlie Kirk serve? You know, is he really a Christian? Is he really Christ-like when he supports foreign wars and Israel and all this? Look at the people he's taking money from. You know, so the guy's a fake Christian. The guy's not a patriot. He hates our country. He's un-American. Let's focus all our firepower on Charlie Kirk. Why are we doing this? It's because Charlie Kirk is a fake patriot, a fake Christian, and he hates his people. He's anti-white. This is our angle.
Nick Fuentes despised Charlie Kirk. And for good reason, because Charlie Kirk actually opposed Nick's evil program. Here's what Charlie Kirk had to say about Nick Fuentes' agenda.
But if you go back to the original founding fathers, they intended this to be a European nation for white men of good stock and character.
So, can you show me, let me answer the question. Can you show me where in the United States Constitution it says that?
It wasn't in the Constitution.
It wasn't in the Constitution because they didn't believe it. What does the phrase e pluribus unum mean? What does the phrase e pluribus unum mean?
Why is that relevant?
Because it was on every founding document and presidential seal from our founding, which means
meaning
out
they
of
believe
many,
this country should
one.
be a
You, sir,
European nation.
and your ideology is not conservative. It is right-wing, identitarian, and has no place in the conservative movement, my friend. Get out of line. Get out of line. I don't platform trolls, and I don't platform, and I don't discuss people, or I don't debate with people that are not good faith actors. And
you debate now is the people champion.
They can keep on yelling at how successful we are and our big events and well over 1,000 employees, but there's a lot of jealousy out there. We build, they complain. We succeed, we win. They blame the Jews.
After Charlie's death, TPUSA made Tucker Carlson one of its chief faces. Tucker, of course, spoke at Charlie's memorial, where he implied that hummus-eating nefarious Jews killed Charlie, with no mention of the ideology of the actual alleged murderer, who was, of course, a trans activist gay furry. Tucker Carlson, in fact, has spent more time talking about Jews and Israel since Charlie's death than about the trans-Tifa ideology that motivated Charlie Kirk's killer. By a long shot, it's not close, which is not a surprise, since he seems to spend very little time these days attacking anyone on the left. Well, now Tucker Carlson has seen fit to launder Nick Fuentes, the person who hated Charlie most and who wished him destruction. That's not an act of friendship, it's an act of sick evil. And then, of course, there's Tucker Carlson's relationship with the vice president. Certainly, Vice President Vance has been quite generous with Tucker Carlson. That loyalty was not reciprocated last week, to say the least. Here, for example, is what Nick Fuentes has said about J.D. Vance's wife, Usha.
Andrew Tate and Bronze Age pervert and all these people, for years, all they talk about is going to the gym, being a vitalist, fighting the Matrix, India smells bad, all this kind of shit. And now they're all in favor of a fat race mixer who's married to a Jeet who named his son Vivek, who was mentored by a Jewish neocon and a gay Fed, Peter Thiel.
Tucker Carlson had on Nick Fuentes and did not ask him a single question about any of this. He just brought him on to launder his ugly ideas and make him more popular. That doesn't seem quite like the act of a friend.
So there you have it. That is the second set of clips. And let's just go through all the things that Fuentes said in those clips. He said Charlie Kirk can't call himself a Christian. He said he fucked TPUSA, that he impregnated his organization. He called Charlie Kirk a bitch. He implied that Charlie Kirk served the devil, that he was a fake Christian. And he called J.D. Vance a fat race mixer who's married to a Jeet. So on some level, it seems abundantly obvious that Fuentes shares or possesses animosity towards Charlie Kirk, towards TPUSA. He attacked his identity. He attacked J.D. Vance on the basis of his wife not being white because his wife is Indian. And you have to ask yourself, is this the kind of person you want to be brought into a coalition if your goal is to win elections? The answer to that question is abundantly obvious. It's no, clearly not. But I do just want to reiterate, what this fundamentally comes down to is whether or not the United States will be America first or Israel first. All these quotes from Nick Fuentes in the grand scheme don't mean much. And I do agree, Nick Fuentes has said terrible things, and he's someone we should be highly skeptical of. But this comes back to one thing. Who will determine the fate of the GOP in 2028? Do not lose sight of that. With that being said, we're going to play the next set of clips, and this is from Ben Shapiro's show where he was criticizing things that Tucker Carlson has said. So we're going to play that and then react to it.
But most of all, Tucker Carlson acts as an ideological launderer for other people's evils. Tucker Carlson says many inflammatory things, always buying back just enough of it to appear as though he's not saying what he's clearly saying. He's a master of gaslighting. Tucker Carlson, for example, would never say out loud what Nick Fuentes does. He wouldn't say the things many of his guests say. And so instead, he acts as an ideological launderer. He takes other people's hideous ideas, he softens them, he treats them with love and care, and then he provides them with a massive signal boost. He isn't merely talking to people in good faith, of course. He's promoting certain people and ideas and attacking others. So, for example, he'll ask a series of wildly obsequious questions to Nick Fuentes. He'll even let Nick Fuentes' support for Joseph Stalin slide.
It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday. Oh. I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. I was an admirer. But we don't need to go into that, I guess.
Okay, let's get back to this. We'll circle back to that.
But he will grill Ted Cruz about the population of Iran. Tucker Carlson will have on Vladimir Putin's evil, anti-American mouthpiece, Alexander Dugin, and then praise him.
Alexander Dugin is a 62-year-old Russian academic philosopher. He spent his life in Moscow. He was an anti-Soviet dissident as a young man. And now he is famous the world over, in the English language press anyway, as, quote, Putin's brain. But he is not a political figure here in Russia. He is, once again, a philosopher. And his ideas are deeply offensive to some people. In August of 2022, his only daughter was murdered in Moscow when a car bomb killed her. U.S. intelligence says she was murdered by the Ukrainian government, and we take that at face value. But what's interesting is that, once again, Alexander Dugin is not a military leader. He's not a close daily advisor to Vladimir Putin. He is a writer who writes about big ideas. And for this, his books have been banned by the Biden administration in the United States. You cannot buy them on Amazon, banning books in the United States because the ideas inside are too dangerous. He's often described, again, in the English language press as far right. We'll let you assess. But we wanted to talk to him about some of his ideas, these ideas that are so dangerous that his only daughter was murdered over them, and his book's been banned in the United States.
Tucker Carlson will have on a Hitler-friendly pseudo-historian to minimize the Holocaust and blame Winston Churchill for World War II, and he will call him America's best and most honest historian.
I thought Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War. Now, he didn't kill the most people, he didn't commit the most atrocities, but I believe, and I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. You know, Germany, look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, of local political prisoners and so forth that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there.
And that is the pseudo-historian that Tucker Carlson has said is the best and most honest historian in America. Tucker Carlson will have on over and over a pro-Chinese propagandist who used global warming to promote global socialism, all in order to criticize Israel and hug China.
Israel has run American foreign policy in the Middle East for 30 years. That's how it works. This is actually the truth. If we drop our angst on big bad Russia, actually, we didn't have a chance to talk about it this time, maybe another time, big bad China, which is also not going to invade the United States, not going to threaten us, not going to go to war with us. They're trying to deal with aging, and they've got their declining population and many other things. Not that they're falling apart. It's a very impressive civilization, but they're not a threat to the United States, honestly, and Iran is not a threat.
Tucker Carlson, of course, brings on pro-Hamas voices episode after episode after episode. The instances are almost limitless. Tucker Carlson will host Andrew Tate, a pornographer and scam artist who mocks rape victims and preaches a cult of narcissism and cruelty. And of course, Tucker Carlson will glorify him and present him as a maligned truth teller rather than an emblem of moral rot. See, this is how Tucker Carlson's ideological laundering works. You bring your dirty, ugly ideologies to Tucker Carlson's rhetorical car wash. He mixes it with some of the vestigial respect Americans have for him from his Fox News days, and voila, hideous ideas suddenly become mainstream. And then, of course, Tucker denies he said anything controversial at all. He was just asking questions. He was just interviewing people.
Okay, so there you have it. So Ben Shapiro, and that's the last set of clips. You guys get the idea. Ben Shapiro criticizes and distrusts Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes because of their track record of saying objectionable things, and Tucker Carlson's track record of praising and interviewing objectionable people with minimal pushback. And everybody has called Tucker Carlson out on his shtick. It's abundantly obvious by now. Tucker Carlson will do this thing where he'll bring somebody onto his show with an obvious ideological agenda in mind. And what he'll do is he'll ask somebody a loaded question with an answer that's already embedded. And he'll prompt the person who he's interviewing to answer that question, or they'll be prompted to answer that question. And they'll respond in the most obvious way possible. They'll respond with what Tucker Carlson assumed they would respond with, and then he'll act shocked based on that response. This is his whole shtick. Okay, and everybody can see right through it. It's transparent. And everybody, I mean, including myself, but Ben Shapiro, obviously, is suspicious of Tucker Carlson because he ignored Fuentes praising Stalin. He positively interviewed Alexander Dugin, which I wasn't even aware of, but Alexander Dugin believes in Eurasianism. And Eurasianism is a philosophy and ideology that's popular in Russia. It's popular with the current administration in the Kremlin, which effectively argues that the United States should be subservient, really the entire West. All of Western civilization should be subservient to civilizational states like Russia and regional powers that are authoritarian in their structure. Eurasianism effectively argues that Russia and Eurasian countries are superior to the West. They want to see the West fall. They believe that liberal democracy is corrosive, and they believe that authoritarian governments are superior. And this is effectively what Eurasianism is. This is what Alexander Dugin believes. So that's a side note. But to interview someone positively who openly supports the downfall of Western civilization is just odd. But yeah, so Tucker will positively interview a Russian puppet. He'll ignore all the controversial things Fuentes has said. He'll positively glamorize Andrew Tate. He'll interview somebody who thinks Winston Churchill was the primary antagonist in World War II with minimal pushback. And then he'll interview Jeffrey Sachs, who frequently appears on Chinese state TV criticizing the West. So there's obviously some kind of ideological motive here, and we should all be suspicious of Tucker Carlson. Like, I think that's obvious. But once again, fundamentally, I don't care about whether or not we can trust Tucker Carlson. I don't care about that. Tucker Carlson is useful. And Tucker Carlson is doing something that is meaningful and important. He's pushing back against neocon foreign policy in favor of something that's more beneficial for our country. So whether or not he's a mouthpiece for Russia or a mouthpiece for China or supports those regimes or Venezuela, it's really of no difference to me. It's immaterial. At the end of the day, if he supports regime change in Washington and a different state of affairs, one that's more beneficial to the everyday American, that is something I support. So once again, let's not forget, this has nothing to do with Tucker Carlson interviewing Alexander Dugin or Jeffrey Sachs or Daryl Cooper. None of that matters. Take that into account, be skeptical of Tucker Carlson, but don't lose sight of the fundamental ideological battle that's taking place right before our very eyes. America first versus Israel first. And I know what side I'm on. I'm on America first. Now, with that said, I'm going to let Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes defend themselves. I'm going to play some of their clips from Monday, and we're going to react to those. But I think it's only fair that I give both sides, or all three sides rather, the opportunity to explain themselves and defend themselves. So we're going to play Tucker Carlson's clip responding to Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin.
But there's something so still to this day startling about watching someone go, my deeply held religious views are that I can't hate Jewish people. And then the response is, look, a Jew hater. So bizarre.
Well, right. And it scrambles the literal brain. And I am literal. I'm a writer, so I believe in words and their meaning. And I think they have nuance, but basically fixed meanings. And so to see someone lie or speak in a way that's dishonest, but totally unmoored from physical reality is always bewildering. You're like, but no, that's not, I said the opposite. Right. And then you realize, of course, it's not about you or what you said. It's about something bigger. And there are a couple things. I mean, the most obvious on a political level, this is a fight over what happens after Donald Trump. What does the Republican Party look like? Does it actually adopt an America first foreign policy as promised 10 years ago? Or does it maintain its neoconservative posture, which is very unpopular with the public and has borne no fruit? I mean, it's been a disaster on every level for the United States for, since 9/11, at least. But what happens after Trump goes? And that's what this is about. That's why they're vesting the energy in this. That's what the rage is about, because they don't want to lose control of foreign policy. I just can't say that enough. It's about foreign policy. They don't care about domestic policy. They don't care about the United States, but they do care about the U.S. Treasury and the Pentagon to projection of force on behalf of Israel. They're different from the way things are operating now. And of course, I mean, I disagree with the direction the U.S. government's taking in a whole bunch of different ways, but I don't think we should burn the U.S. government down. My view, which I know is yours as well, is the U.S. government should act on behalf of American citizens. America first. Doesn't mean a bellicose posture. Doesn't mean you attack people. In fact, it probably means you attack fewer people and you shed less blood. You act on behalf of your citizens. They own the government. They pay for the government. But basically, in the end, I decided Nick Fuentes can't be canceled. They've been trying since he was a freshman in college. It doesn't work. In fact, he's gotten bigger. He is enormously talented. Anyone who denies that is lying. And he has like a not fully coherent, but a semi-coherent kind of position. And I would like to hear what it is, because that's kind of my job. And I'm also interested because he's the most influential voice for men under 30 in the United States. More influential than me, more influential than you. I don't think there's any question about that. I spent a lot of time thinking about this and talking to a lot of people about it. And I think that that is true. So it's not like I didn't make Nick Fuentes, hardly. Virtue and sin are not transmitted genetically. There is no such thing as blood guilt. Therefore, collective punishment is always immoral. God created each person individually. He did not create communities at once. He created people, and all of us will die and in the end face God alone. So it's about the person. And people can be changed by God, by the way. And the New Testament is that story of people who were, in the case of the whole hero of the New Testament, the human hero was a guy called Paul, was murdering Christians as a Pharisee, and then becomes the greatest proselytizer in the history of Christianity and my personal hero. So like, don't tell me that people can't be changed because of their blood. Now that is the basis, that position is the basis of Western civilization. We often talk about Western civilization and we're all defending Western civilization. Israel's defending Western civilization. Israel does not have a Western position on this question. The Israeli position, which they say this out loud all the time, is that everybody who's related to a terrorist shares in his guilt. That's collective punishment. It is blood guilt, and it's antithetical to Christianity and to the West. And so for me, and by the way, Israel's not the only country that does this. Most countries do this. Literally most countries do this. All of Asia, India, this is like an intuitive response that people have. Russia, we're going to punish the family too because they're related, of course. Only the West, and I mean specifically the Anglosphere, Western Europe, because their foundation is Christian, reject that explicitly. Our justice system is based on the individual. So I just wanted to say that. I want to say that in every venue because it's a feature of my religious faith, but it's also my inheritance as a Western man, as the product of Western civilization. And that's what I want to defend. Randy Fine does not believe that, of course. Lindsey Graham does not believe that, of course. So the idea that I hate Jews, well, obviously I don't hate Jews at all. Of course, obviously, it's almost feels beneath me to say that, but it's a fact. But I'm not allowed to hate any person because of the group he's attached to. I reject. That's what identity politics is. It's the belief that people are either better or worse based on how they were born. And that is not a Western understanding of people or of God.
And so anyway, okay, I promise I won't say another thing.
Your country comes before your tribe, no matter what tribe it is, including mine. I'm not, any tribe, okay? Tribalism leads to genocide every single time. We can't have it. The only way to preserve the United States, this vast, country in which there's no working majority of anything, is to emphasize citizenship, our common Americanness, country before tribe. And the overwhelming majority of Americans want that and can accept it. And anyone who can't accept it can have their own political party, which will not get a majority of anything ever. It's just kind of that simple. And I'm just grateful that we can have this conversation openly for the first time.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. And I wanted to just let that whole clip run because Tucker Carlson said a lot of things there that I thought were very important that I wanted to expand on. And I think he did a pretty good job defending himself and clarifying his positions and why he interviewed Fuentes in the first place. For starters, he believes that, he said this, the assassinations on his character, and I've said this many times throughout this video, the assassinations on his character are not really about him per se, or about the fact that he interviewed Nick Fuentes. What this fundamentally comes down to reiterate, is what will the future, who will dictate the future of the GOP, of the Republican Party? What will their foreign policy and domestic policy especially be in 2028? What will the platform of the GOP be in 2028? This is about purging the neocons from the deep state, purging the neocons from the government. And in order for that to happen, you need somebody like Tucker who is going to continuously highlight the ills within this party. It has to happen. It is a necessary evil. In order to transcend this neocon slop, we may need to sacrifice an election to the Democrats, unfortunately. At least that's what's being argued here. And furthermore, his attack on the neocons, which I actually think is very interesting, is that it is not Western. It is an anti-Western view. All these people, all these neocons who are supposedly defending Western civilization, Israel is defending Western civilization. Tucker Carlson calling out the neocons on this is fascinating and very important because the United States is a byproduct of Western civilization, obviously. So if you have people like Randy Fine, Ted Cruz, all these other neocons, Lindsey Graham, who have this obsession with violence, maybe those people are not the best representatives of a Western country. And this is what Tucker Carlson is saying. And what was so interesting, and this is verbatim, straight from Tucker Carlson, he said, there is no such thing as blood guilt. And a lot of neocons, especially people like Ben Shapiro, don't agree, which fundamentally means they don't have a Western mindset, especially not on Gaza. You can't believe that an entire group, an entire ethnic group, the Palestinians, are damned collectively based on the way they were born. You can't justify the indiscriminate killing of tens of thousands of women and children and then claim to be this ardent defender of Western civilization. That doesn't work because that's not Western. You can't collectively punish an entire ethnic group in one country and then support individual inalienable rights in another. That doesn't make any sense, obviously. So Tucker Carlson calling this out is wonderful. And I think he hit the nail on the head, calling out the likes of Levin and Shapiro and all these other neocons who are criticizing him. He's on the money with that. The other thing I'll say is, I like that he ties this back to Christianity. Because, let's be real, at the end of the day, Christianity built the United States of America. You could try to argue the government is secular, which is true, but fundamentally, dissenting Protestantism is what built the United States of America. Those principles. And when I say dissenting Protestantism, that simply means every subsequent generation of Americans prior to the formalization of the country in 1783 with the drafting of the Constitution, every subsequent generation of Americans going all the way back to the First Great Awakening in the 1730s, they would splinter off from the previous generation of Christians to form their own sect. And this continuous splintering into different denominations of Protestantism in the United States formed this ethos of rebellion, formed this emphasis on liberty, this rejection of hierarchy, this rejection of orthodoxy that was so common in the Catholic Church. And it emphasized the individual's relationship with God, because at the end of the day, this is what Protestants believe, it is your individual relationship with God that earns you salvation. Not going through this procedure with the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church and the sacraments has this collective subjugated to the Catholic Church and church authorities. And that's why you see where the Catholic Church went in South America, there is no country at all, anywhere in South America, at all, that resembles the United States of America and our emphasis on individualism and individual responsibility. We don't believe in collectivism. We don't believe in collective tribalism. So to support a country that does, which is completely antithetical to our values as Americans, is a big slap in the face. And for people like Shapiro to defend what Israel's doing, even though it completely violates all of our principles as Americans, as Westerners, is asinine and is worthy of scrutiny and condemnation. So good on Tucker for that. The second clip that I'm going to show you guys is of Tucker. It's from the same video. It is of Tucker going after specifically Mark Levin, Ted Cruz, Ben Shapiro, the usual suspects. And I'm going to give you guys my feedback once that entire clip plays through. But this is the second part of Tucker defending his positions on why he did the interview with Nick Fuentes to begin with. So let's play the second clip.
I gotta say, there's a part of me that just feels like, okay, now deal with this, man, and now say the exact same thing and watch it fall on deaf ears as it's completely empty. And by the way, never apologized for this. I'm sorry, Tucker, I'm gonna let you go for a while.
No, but you're so right. No. I just, it makes me sad. I mean, because what is that? Like, what actually is that? And it's, of course, hatred. It's hatred toward a group. It's, and people like Ben Shapiro and Josh Hammer and Ted Cruz, all these people, like, they think in terms of groups. And that's what Levin said to me. It's like, my group, people are hurting my group. And it's like, if your group means your family, people you love, I get it. But if you're thinking purely in terms of your ethnic group, which is what he is saying, then you inevitably become very hateful toward other ethnic groups, actually. You know, people like Seth Dillon or Ben Shapiro, you know, they get a lot out of wearing bulletproof vests and like, oh, I'm so under attack and all this stuff. And it's like, the truth is they are openly pro-violence. So how in the world could you justify killing tens of thousands of children or justify a pager attack, which is an act of terrorism where you indiscriminately blowing people's genitals off? You don't know who's holding the pager and you're celebrating it. What are you celebrating? You're celebrating violence. So I say that on Rogan. And Ben Shapiro is like, Holocaust denier or so whatever, something, one of these meaningless phrases that mean Nazi, bad person. And it's like, why would that bother you? Why are you so offended that I'm opposed to killing innocents? And of course, the answer is because your whole worldview and the whole purpose of your life is to justify killing innocents. And clearly the joy in your life derives from killing innocents. And so that's who we're dealing with here. Okay. Like Lindsey Graham literally said the other night, he's like, we're killing the right people. Man, imagine what it's going to be like standing at the end, you know, at the judgment, because there is a judgment, period. And like you are celebrating killing the right people. Like, ugh, I wouldn't want to be that man. And I mean it. I'm not trying to be self-righteous. Like, I'll have to answer for a lot of shit, but I hope I'll never have to answer for taking glee in the killing of human beings. And they celebrate violence day after day. That's where their foreign policy comes from. That's where their worldview is. Strangling the neck of a Jew. Who even thinks that way? Someone who's thinking very often in violent terms. And so, and hateful terms. That's hate. And so people like that, when aroused to hysteria, and I feel sorry for them, and I just want to say that again, Lindsey Graham, another violence worshiper, like the idea that they're promoting violence, well, they've been promoting violence for decades because this whole project is about violence. It's about the thrill that they feel killing their enemies, the godlike power they imagine they have when they extinguish human life. That's the whole game for them. And we shouldn't like, so, oh, you're not promoting violence? Oh, you're definitely promoting violence. And that's why I oppose you, because I'm opposed to that. We don't have a right to kill people. We do not have a right to kill the innocent, period. Because we're not God. And that's the dividing line between me and Ben Shapiro. And that's why when I said, you know, Hiroshima, of course, I'm for forcing Imperial Japan to stop doing what it's doing, make them apologize. I'm for beating them. I am. But I'm not for incinerating tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of their civilians, because the civilians didn't do anything wrong. And I don't think we're allowed to kill the innocent. I mean, there are a couple quotes from that Josh Hammer guy who was like, Europeans have hatred or anti-Semitism in their DNA. What? First of all, nobody has hatred in their DNA. People, people are not sinful or virtuous by nature of their DNA, period. So, but he believes that. So like it does create hate. There's a lot of anti-European, anti-white hostility that grows out of that. Like if you think people are going to come kill you, you hate them. And I do blame whoever raised Josh Hammer or Dave Rubin, who probably doesn't really believe, Dave doesn't have much of a soul. I don't know if he actually believes any of this, but there are a lot of actually good people I know. Michael Savage, I've always really liked Michael Savage. He keeps texting me like, you're a Nazi. It's like, Michael, it's me, dude. I we're friends. And that is so, obviously makes me so sad because I really like Michael Savage. I always have. But beyond my feelings, which are not that relevant, that gets you to hate. That produces hate. Fear produces hate. If you're panicked, like if I felt my house was being broken into, I would hate the home invader enough to shoot him without feeling bad about it because I feel so threatened. Right. It's that principle, but they're making it kind of nationwide and they're really playing with fire, I think. And it's not about, and I agree with your assessment of Ben, whom I don't hate. I feel sorry for Ben, a man of limited talent who, for whatever reason, became big in a kind of artificial way or filled some vacuum that was later filled by talented people. But Ben is like very afraid. And I think a lot of the neocons and neocon adjacent people believe this stuff. Like they believe that there's like a Fourth Reich on the, I know because I know a lot of them and they text me and like, I can't, Alex Berenson, who's like a very fragile person, but like a good, nice guy and very smart. And I've like promoted Berenson for, oh my gosh. Me too. For real, because I really agree. I thought he was brave, but at the same time, like a very fearful person, very fearful. And I know a lot of people like this, who I really like and have always really liked. And they're texting me like, I can't believe you're a Nazi. Like I'm gonna have to flee the United States. And Ben is like this. Ben fears that he's gonna get hurt. And it's like, I look at this and I'm like, I think Ben's fine. It's like, who's more likely to get hurt, me or Ben? It's like not even really close. But that doesn't matter. He feels that way. And a lot of these people who are throwing this Nazi stuff around, they're doing it for a reason. Of course, this is part of a strategy. We got to clear the skeptics out of the Republican Party by the time Trump leaves, or else the neocons will lose their stranglehold on the party. That is the goal. But I just want to say again, as they say these radical, really kind of crazy things, they convince themselves and they become dangerous. I'm just saying that. And also tormented. They're really unhappy. Like imagine, I talked to, Mark Levin, but Levin did say something amazing to me. He's like, everyone hates Jews. There are Jew haters everywhere. And I'm fighting the Jew haters. And it's like, I guess if you spend your life on Twitter, you run into a lot of Jew haters, but in real life America, like, no, that's not actually, most people are really nice. And there is no Nazi movement building in America. That's just fake. And but I really think Levin believes that. And I think he had one of these like kind of crazy childhoods with like a screechy mother who just scared the shit out of him every day of his childhood or something like that. Clearly this guy's had a lot of like trauma in his personal life, but it almost doesn't matter the cause. He really believes. He said it to me on the phone, Shapiro too. And a lot of other good people who are not necessarily crazy are convinced that the Fourth Reich is rising. And that's bad for them as people because it torments them and makes them unhappy and alienates their wives and deforms their children, right? It's all bad. But it's also bad for America because panicked, hysterical people are capable of doing, things they wouldn't do if they weren't panicked and hysterical. So we do need to convince everybody the Fourth Reich is not rising. Settle down. I'm not a Nazi. I hate the Nazis. Let me tell you how I hate the Nazis and why. And I have real reasons for feeling that way. It's not just because you're supposed to hate the Nazis. I actually do hate the Nazis for real reasons. But let's just have that conversation. Let's stop when you stop the conversation, everyone gets like completely paranoid and suspicious. That's one of the reasons, the main reason I interviewed Fuentes. It's like, let's just get it out there. If you disagree, tell me how. That's fine. What's wrong with that?
So those clips, and that's the last one from Tucker, that was from Monday night on Dave Smith. And he said a lot of interesting things in that 5-minute clip. The first one was he discussed how there is this group of Jewish people, specifically in media and politics, like Ben Shapiro, like Mark Levin, like Josh Hammer, who weaponize their historical trauma as an excuse to attack legitimate criticism of the state of Israel. And this is the thing, they hold us hostage with this emotional blackmail, this historical trauma, these real historical grievances, and real anti-Semitism that is afoot in the present, but it's not being done in good faith. It's being done cynically. Do any of these people actually think there's this Nazi uprising, this Nazi takeover of the federal government that's imminent? No, of course they don't think that. Unless they spend all day on Twitter, and unless you're somebody like Ben Shapiro or Josh Hammer, and you're in politics all day, and all you look at is politics, and all you look at is Twitter, maybe it skews your perception of reality, maybe it does make you hysterical. But if you put a bullet to these people's head or a gun to these people's head and ask them, do you think that there's a Nazi takeover coming to America in the next 5-10 years? They'd all tell you no. At least I would think. That's the logical answer. That's the correct answer. But it doesn't matter. Because none of these people actually, let's just be real, none of these people actually think there's a Nazi takeover coming anytime soon. What we're seeing here is just them using historical grievances as a pretext to block any legitimate criticism of Israel and any legitimate criticism of the GOP. Because that's what this comes down to. It's about power and control. It's about neocon hegemony versus America First in the Republican Party. And what will our stance on Israel be moving forward? That's all that this is about, to reiterate. And that's obvious. Don't be distracted by all the terms and all the labels these people like to throw around, because that's not what this is about. Ben Shapiro does not think Tucker Carlson is an anti-Semite or a Jew hater. I don't believe he thinks that. He's just using that as an excuse to silence legitimate criticism of the GOP and Israel. That's it. That's all this comes down to. It's weaponizing historical trauma. It's weaponizing historical injustices. And it's sick. And the second thing is, the problem with these people, the problem with people like Shapiro, Josh Hammer, Mark Levin, is they think in groups. And they have this persecution complex that makes them hysterical. They feel like they're under attack. They feel like they're being suppressed, that they're being marginalized. And they cultivate this kind of hostile worldview towards everybody else. It's us versus them. It's how a lot of the Jewish community thinks. And it's a destructive mindset. Because you get people like Josh Hammer who say things like Europeans have anti-Semitism in their DNA, which is obviously insane. I mean, this group of people that has a disproportionate level of influence over our society and over our politics, if they have that worldview, they shouldn't have that much control. As a minority especially, this incredibly powerful group of Jews who operate worldwide, who have immense resources and immense influence over our country's politics, if they have this worldview that Europeans are anti-Semitic by nature of their existence, that's dangerous. Are you kidding me? Those people have no business controlling a society of 350 million people if that's their worldview. They must be deposed immediately. Because if not, we live in this hostile environment where any kind of criticism of them is perceived as anti-Semitic, and they can immediately bring the hammer down on you. Because this is their worldview. They have this persecution complex. That's why we live in a system where Right Wing Watch, Media Matters, the ADL, the SPLC, the Daily Wire, any other Jewish column, Jewish publication, can destroy your reputation in a matter of seconds or minutes or hours by taking one clip that you said or one thing that you posted on social media and completely ruining your life because they feel like everybody's out to get them, so they overreact. We can't live in a system like this. It's unhealthy, it's abusive, it's toxic. It must be destroyed completely and utterly. And this is completely evidenced by what we saw last week with Kevin Roberts, the director at the Heritage Foundation. He comes out swinging on Friday, defending Tucker Carlson for interviewing Nick Fuentes, and he says we're putting Christianity first, America first, and we value freedom of speech. And all the usual suspects, Laura Loomer, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, E.L. Jacoby, Josh Hammer, all the same, this small group of Jews who are in politics, who have a lot of power and influence, come out and completely destroy this guy. I mean, drag him through the ringer. They're calling him an anti-Semite, a neo-Nazi. And then the following week, he has to crawl on his knees like a baby, like a pussy. Excuse my language, but it's just true. He has to crawl on his knees back to his donors for saying one thing that was construed as anti-Semitic, for defending Tucker Carlson. He defends Tucker Carlson for interviewing Nick Fuentes. He didn't even say anything anti-Semitic, and all of these Jewish donors are killing this guy. They're calling him an anti-Semite, a neo-Nazi. He's platforming anti-Semitism. They tried to destroy this guy's life. And all these staffers and all these people who worked at the institution were leaving or got fired. They threatened to pull out their money. And the director had to crawl back to the donors so that they didn't leave, so they didn't pull their money out of Heritage because of one thing that he said. This is the problem. We can't live in this system. We cannot live in this system where these people think Europeans are anti-Semitic by nature. They have all this control over our society. It's just the most abusive and insane system on earth. And what makes it worse is that these people think they have moral authority and they don't. Because they'll call us anti-Semitic, they'll say we hate Jews, they'll call us neo-Nazis for addressing this very obvious coalition of people who are working in concert with one another to silence any Israel-critical voices. They'll call us anti-Semitic for pointing out that very obvious fact, but then they'll turn around and celebrate when Muslim children in the Middle East get killed, get slaughtered, get bombs dropped on their heads. It's the most blatant and evil double standard in this country, and it must end immediately right now. We can't live like this, where a group of people can laugh at Palestinian people being killed, Palestinian women and children being killed every day, laugh about it, lie about it, make excuses for it. And then when we call them out and say, that's evil, that's wrong, you're despicable, what is wrong with you? They say we're Nazis, we're anti-Semitic, we're hateful. What is that? That is the textbook definition of an abusive relationship. We cannot live in this system. You make one post on social media. You interview one person, and it's not even Nazi propaganda, it's a regular interview. You interview one person. You say one thing on social media. You make one off-colored remark. And the next thing you know, the entire ADL is down your throat. You're getting blacklisted by Canary Mission. You're getting slandered by people like Ben Shapiro and Laura Loomer. We can't let these people bully us. Wanting our country back from this Jewish oligarchy, this transnational gang with immense resources who thinks Europeans have anti-Semitism in their DNA, wanting our country back from that group is legitimate. It's righteous. It's justified. And it's just all the emotional blackmail, all the psychological abuse, all the labeling. You're a Nazi, you're a Hitler supporter, you're a Holocaust denier. It's insane towards regular people, people like Tucker. You could say that about Fuentes, but about Tucker Carlson, really? Or anybody else for that matter? Kevin Roberts, are you kidding me? That's the problem. And on some level, we have to do our due diligence, because there is legitimate anti-Semitism and Jew hate on social media, obviously, and we don't condone that. We are completely opposed to that. I am completely opposed to that. Most people are completely opposed to that. Most people do not support Hitler. But to call anybody who criticizes Israel an anti-Semite or a Jew hater, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. It's evil, and it needs to end. And a lot of these people know this. They know we're not anti-Semitic. They know Tucker Carlson doesn't hate Jews. They know Candace Owens doesn't hate Jews. They know most of us don't hate Jews. What we hate is the fact that a foreign government is controlling our government, coercing us into supporting a genocide against a population that's done nothing wrong to us. And then when we call them out, they say we're evil and anti-Semitic. That's what people are mad about. It has nothing to do with hating Jews. It's about hating this abusive and toxic arrangement, and we want out of it. We don't want to live in a society where the ADL can ruin someone's reputation overnight. The SPLC, Right Wing Watch, Media Matters can destroy us. That is the abusive system that we want out of. And especially when it's coming from people who think in terms of ethnic competition, who think Europeans are anti-Semitic by nature, who laugh at children being killed, who laugh at women and children being slaughtered on a daily basis and defend it, and then tell us we're evil for calling that out. That is the toxic bond. That is the toxic relationship that we want out of. And you can call us anti-Semitic or neo-Nazis or whatever other million other names you have in store for us. It doesn't matter. This is evil and it needs to end. And we will not stop talking about it until it is, until it's completely over. Now, with that said, we're going to move on to the last part of this. And I'm going to show you guys a few clips of Nick Fuentes commenting on the whole subject, on the Tucker interview, Ben Shapiro, the Republican Jewish Coalition. So with that said, I'm going to let him speak for himself. Let's play the first clip.
If I talk about organized Jewry, and by that I mean they have many different organizations. Want to hear about some of them? The World Jewish Congress, which is headed up by, I think Larry Fink is going to take the role, or maybe he's up at World Economic Forum. I believe the World Jewish Congress is led by Ronald Lauder, who's the heir to the Estee Lauder perfume fortune. That's one of them. The World Zionist Organization is another. You have the Zionist Organization of America, led by Mort Klein. You've got the Anti-Defamation League. You've got the B'nai B'rith Society. You've got many Jewish fraternities. You've got AIPAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee. You've got the Organization of Major Jewish Organizations. I forget the acronym exactly. So when I say organized Jewry, this is a community. They organize on the basis of their ethnicity, their heritage, their religion. They have many different federations, organizations, congresses, groups, whatever. And when they convene together, like they did this weekend at the RJC, they ask questions like, what is best for us as a group? What is a word for this? This is identity politics. It's a word that Tucker Carlson used in our interview. It's a word I haven't heard in a long time, but I think it's useful here. They're engaging in identity politics. They're not saying what is best objectively. They're not saying what is best for America. They're not saying what is best for conservatives. When they convene at the Republican Jewish Coalition, they're there to answer the question, what is best for us, the Jews? What is best for us as the Jewish community? And the implication, the subtext of this, is that this is distinct from what is best for everybody, including the Jews, or everybody other than the Jews, or all Americans. Like, to say what is best for the Jews is exclusionary. It's to say the Jews are a group organized on the basis of that shared identity, and they recognize that that group has explicit interests as a group. Which, you know, when they call me anti-Semitic for saying organized Jewry, I don't know what they're talking about, because that's what this is. And I don't think there's anything immoral about acknowledging that. Anyway, so they convene this weekend at the Republican Jewish Coalition, and there is an air of alarm. That is the culture at the RJC this weekend. They are hysterical and panicked. And they had speeches there by the Senator Ted Cruz, the Senator Lindsey Graham, the Representative Randy Fine. I believe Dan Crenshaw, he either spoke there or on television shortly thereafter. But I want to talk about Mark Levin's comments because his were the most interesting. A lot of these other remarks, we can get into some of the things that were said because I think they belie some of the double standards and maybe elucidate the real reason they're so angry. But I want to talk specifically about what Mark Levin said, because Mark Levin seems to be the most honest out of all of them. He's certainly the most emotional. He's sort of like a woman. Mark Levin is kind of like transgender. I think he might have a vagina because he's the most emotional. And it's weird about Jews. They'll have like a weird thing with their mothers. And it has to do with the religion. We could get into that in the super chats. But they'll have this weird dynamic with their moms. All the Jews, not all, but a lot of them, they have the overbearing mother complex. And so many of the men are very emotional. And they're very histrionic, like women. And Mark Levin, I wouldn't be surprised if he had a vagina, actually, if he's a girl. because he's such an emotional woman. You watch his speech, he's literally shaking with anger. Mark Levin, I mean, this guy's like, by definition, a Jewish pussy, which a lot of them are. Anyway, but Mark Levin, he had the most interesting statement. Because he's so emotional, I think he told on himself a little bit. And I want to read through his statement. This was not at the Republican Jewish Coalition. This was in an interview a couple of days later. I think it was on the sidelines of the conference. He said this, and this is a longer excerpt, but I want to work through all of this. This is a verbatim quote. So this is no editorializing. There's no editing here. This is not exaggeration, not hyperbole. This is verbatim what Mark Levin said in a video published today. He said, quote, I decided 6 or 7 months ago that this Tucker Carlson was not being challenged. I had people calling me, some very famous, some of the Jewish community, very powerful. What are we going to do about it? They said to me. Okay? He said, very famous, very powerful Jews are calling me, Mark Levin, and they're saying, what are we going to do about Tucker Carlson? So this is not out of the anti-Semitic ramblings of the neo-Nazi Klan meeting. This is from the mouth of Mark Levin. Okay? This is at the Republican Jewish Coalition for the Jewish News Syndicate. That is who hosted the interview. This is Mark Levin. He said 6 or 7 months ago, 6-7 made an appearance, I am sorry to say. He said 6 months ago, I had very famous, powerful Jews calling me up saying, what are we going to do about Tucker Carlson? Okay, this is what happens. He got the call. He goes on. He says, the fact is, they, and by they he means people like myself, have access to our colleges and universities. This fusion of Marxists, Islamists on the left, and the neo-Nazis and Klansmen on the right, they hate us. They hate America, and now they hate evangelical Christians. They hate us. Who's us? Oh, it's Jewish people. When he says us, he's not talking about Americans. He's talking about Jewish people. Does Mark Levin believe if we're Klansmen and neo-Nazis, does he think we hate white people? We don't hate white people. Does he think we hate America? We're called America first. We don't hate America. So what do Marxists, Islamists, and Nazis and Klansmen in his parlance, what do they all have in common? They don't have anything in common other than Jews call all of them anti-Semitic. He says they think we're going to build a Republican majority with 1930s Nazis and 1950s racists. That's not going to fly, says Mark Levin. The obligation we have here is to use whatever resources we have, whatever roles we have in the community. It's time to get tough. Okay? He says that's not going to, you think we're going to build a coalition with Tucker and Nick Fuentes? That ain't going to fly. We have an obligation to use our resources, our roles in the community, and we have to get tough.
Okay. Apologies if that clip was a bit long, but I let it play out as long as I did because he said a lot of important things there, and let's just go through them. The first and most obvious one is the fact that this idea that world Jewry or global Jewry or organized Jewry is some big conspiracy, it's just a lie. It's obviously real. And we can go through the list, and I mean, obviously Nick pointed all of this out, but we can go through the list if you guys don't believe me. We have the World Jewish Congress, the World Zionist Organization, the Jewish Agency for Israel, the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, the Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany, the Jewish National Fund, the Zionist Organization of America, J Street, AIPAC, Friends of the Israel Defense Forces, B'nai B'rith, the American Jewish Committee, the Anti-Defamation League, the Republican Jewish Coalition, the Jewish Democratic Council of America, the National Council of Jewish Women, Union for Reform Judaism, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, the Orthodox Union, Chabad Lubavitch, I mean the list goes on, the United Jewish Appeal. So, this is not a conspiracy. And Mark Levin gave the whole game away. As Fuentes pointed out, Mark Levin himself said 6 to 7 months ago, he was getting calls from powerful Jews on what to do about Tucker Carlson. He said it himself. And apparently that was a conspiracy. This idea that Jews coordinate with one another at conferences, at coalitions, at organizations, at meetings, and they coordinate with one another to construct an agenda on what is in the best short-term or long-term interest of Jews as a group, as an exclusive group. And they correspond and pool resources from powerful, richer Jews who are in entertainment, who are in finance, who are in banking, who are in academia, who are in business. And these powerful Jews get in contact with people like Mark Levin, with people like Ben Shapiro or Josh Hammer, or powerful politicians that work in Israel. And they correspond with one another to determine what is in their best interest as an ethnicity, as an ethno-religious group. And they do it at all those aforementioned organizations. B'nai B'rith, American Jewish Congress, like ZOA, the World Zionist Organization. All these groups work together to create an agenda for Jews. And the thing about it is they pressure our politicians to serve their interests. And when they don't, they withhold their resources and smear them publicly. Is this not obviously a problem? Our country is in a chokehold because of these groups, because of this organized global Jewry. And Mark Levin said it himself, this is not a conspiracy. And I want to make this very clear and reiterate this as many times as I need to indicate I don't hate Jews, I'm not anti-Semitic, but we're just following the evidence like it's obvious. And for decades, since I was a child, we've been psychologically abused and manipulated and emotionally blackmailed into believing, which is evil, into believing that we are bad somehow for questioning this whatsoever. But when Mark Levin talks to the press and openly says that he's getting phone calls from powerful Jews to smear Tucker Carlson, it's normal. It's okay. It's okay when Mark Levin does it, but when we do it, well, I mean, Mark Levin's just saying the truth. But when we do it, we're horrible people and we have our careers ruined. This is the abusive relationship that we're all tired of. And I don't dislike Jews. I don't hate Jews. Jews are fine. Jews in New York, LA, South Florida, wherever else, there's no issue with them. But the problem is you have an organized campaign of billionaire Jews in correspondence with other Jews in powerful positions in government and politics and media working together. And you have these Jews who, I mean, you have all these organizations. Many of them are international. You have Jews in Israel, Jews in Germany and Spain and France, all across the developed world, corresponding with Jews in America to advance their own interests internationally. But when anybody else does it, I'm losing my voice. Goodness. But when anybody else does it, it's a problem. It's a blatant double standard that needs to be resolved. Okay, so with that being said, the next clip I'm about to show you guys is about 7 minutes long, and it's Fuentes laying in to Shapiro. And this is separate from his criticisms of Mark Levin, organized Jewry, the World Zionist Organization, all that kind of stuff. This is specifically about Ben Shapiro and the way he tried to destroy, annihilate his character and his career before it even had the opportunity to take off. He killed it in the crib for asking benign, innocent questions. So let's play the clip. It's about 7 minutes long. Let's play it.
Ben Shapiro just got back from Israel where he met with Netanyahu. Netanyahu has been prime minister of Israel for 20 years. How many children has he been involved in the murder of? How many rapes from the IDF has Netanyahu been involved in? He is a war criminal, according to the ICC and the ICJ, and by the way, our own government. A murderer, a killer, a warmonger, a war criminal. So let's back this up, Shapiro. You got a problem with jokes on a show. You got a problem with edgelord jokes on a show by a guy, a talk show host. But you sit with people that take children from their mother. You sit with war criminals, bloodthirsty maniacs. He's on trial in 5 different cases in his own country. His own people hate him. That's okay? Tell me again it's about clips. Tell me again it's about being an edgelord or jokes. It's not. And it's never been about that. And he sits there on a show smug. Oh, here's him being here. He said this. He said, and it's a 10-second clip. Fuck you. And you know what that is? That is a coordinated smear campaign. People don't understand how this works. You've got people at Daily Wire that get paid a salary to watch my show. Not because they like it, not because they're interested in it. They get paid. Every time I say something off color, they take the timestamp, they download the clip, and they put that in the folder. What's the purpose of this? So that if somebody ever goes off the reservation, if somebody becomes an inconvenience, we're going to throw that out there and we're going to air that out. Oh, well, you might think this guy's against Israel, but look at this clip. It's dishonest. It's a lie. This is what they do. Accuse, point the finger, blame. You said this, you did that. Don't listen to him. This is how they operate. Said another way, this is what they do to the politicians. That's blackmail. You don't think that's what Jeffrey Epstein was involved in? You don't think that's what the Mossad and the Shin Bet are involved in? Blackmail, intimidation, bullying. If you don't go with what we say, we will destroy your reputation. We'll blackmail you, we'll intimidate you, we'll hurt people you love. We'll take your career, we'll take your money, we'll hurt your life. So you better go along with it. That's what they do. And the whole operation is built on dishonesty. So let's just stop with the games. We don't need to play games anymore. Everybody knows what this is about. And it's not about clips. You know what this is about? This is about Israel. Everybody knows that. Here's the proof, and I can prove it to you. People think I'm going to come out and say, well, yeah, in this clip I said this, and I'm sorry about that. It's a bad faith attack. It's a bad faith character assassination. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that's how they play. That's why everybody's walking on eggshells and got to be so politically correct, because they're afraid of that. I'm not afraid of that. I know what this is. You know what this is. Everyone knows how they operate at this point. This is about the fact that Ben Shapiro only cares about Israel. He's a single issue voter. If he thinks you're with Israel, he supports you. If he thinks you're against Israel, he doesn't support you. That's simple. Israel is doing their make or break, once and for all push to destroy Iran and all of Iran's proxies in Lebanon and Gaza and Yemen and Iraq, etc. And they need all the support they can get. Right now in America, support for this war and for Israel is collapsing. It's in free fall. For the Democrats, for the Republicans. For Shapiro, this is very alarming. They need everybody to get back on board. And if somebody like myself, whether you like or agree with me or not, you don't have to like me, you don't have to agree with me, you don't have to defend everything I've ever said. I wouldn't defend everything I've ever said. I'm a human being. They want you to stop listening to me when I talk about this. That's what that's about. You can think I'm all of the above. It doesn't make me wrong. You can call me Holocaust denier, anti-Semite. You can call me all those things. It wouldn't change anything because I'm right about this. All of that may be true. It may be false. It might be. I'm not going to try to convince you that everything I've said is awesome or the best or you even agree with it. I'm right about this. And the proof, here's how you know this irrefutably. With Shapiro in particular, he was barking up the wrong tree with this one because he canceled me before I said any of those things. Any of those things. The clips that he put on his show today, they're from 2025, 2024, they're from 2021, 2019. They go back 7 years. But on December 25th, 2016, that's the first time that Ben Shapiro called me an anti-Semite. Would you like to know why? This is what I said to Ben Shapiro on Christmas Eve in 2016, 9 years ago. Before I started this show, before the Groyper War, before any of it, before any one of those clips, the Cookie Monster, the Holocaust, well, all that stuff, before any of it. This is what I said on December 25th, 2016. I said, and I quote, I have never read an article skeptical of Israel on Daily Wire. I've never read an author on Daily Wire who was skeptical of Israel. That was the tweet. So all these, oh, he said this, he's a Holocaust denier, he's a Nazi, he's a real Nazi because he said this, because he said that. 9 years ago, before I had a show, before I had 1,000 followers on Twitter, when I was 18 years old, when I was a freshman, before anyone knew who I was, when I was a normie, when I was a basic conservative, I said, I've never heard Ben Shapiro criticize Israel. And do you know what he said to me in response? He said, and I quote, accusing any American Jew who is pro-Israel of being Israel first is a pure form of anti-Semitism. And that is what it has always been about from day one.
All right, so let's just recap all of this. Is it true that Nick Fuentes has said many deplorable, objectionable things in the past about black people, Jewish people, Indian people, brown people? Yeah, obviously. His views on all those things are obviously detestable, abhorrent. Is it true, is it possible that Tucker Carlson is a foreign operative who's taking money from Qatar and secretly has some kind of anti-neocon ideology, some agenda that he's trying to push, where he's defending China, romanticizing Russia, defending, Maduro tacitly? I mean, obviously, right? It's possible that he's some kind of foreign operative. I mean, I don't know. I don't know, right? I don't care. But what is true is that Ben Shapiro has tried to aggressively and in a hostile manner slander the reputations of both of these men. And it isn't even because he cares so much about the things they've said over the years. No, it has nothing to do with that. What this fundamentally comes down to is one thing. That is it. And that one thing is America first or Israel first. That's it. What will the United States posture be towards Israel once Trump is gone? That's it. That's all that matters in this context. Feel however you want about Fuentes. Feel however you want about Tucker Carlson. You don't have to trust either of them. I quite frankly don't care. But to the extent that both of them are useful, vital in this fight against organized global Jewry, which is a thing, not every Jew, not New York, South Florida, LA, they're fine. But this organism, this creature of global organized Jewry, where you have Jews in Europe, in Australia, New Zealand, America, Israel, coordinating with one another, pooling together resources, and meeting with one another to advance the interests of their ethno-religious group, Jews, to the extent that these people have a stranglehold over our politicians, we need to expose that and disempower these people. For as long as that takes, we must continue to rail endlessly against these people. Once again, this is not an attack on Jews. I have no beef with Jews. It is a specific organism of Jews who work with the WZO, who work with the ZOA, who work with B'nai B'rith, who work with the American Jewish Council or American Jewish Committee, who work at the RJC. These are the people who are working with Jews in the media, Jews in finance, Jews in business, wherever else you make money, who are working together, gambling, whatever, who are working with one another to support their own cause at the expense of our country's sovereignty. That is all that matters here. I don't care that Nick Fuentes has said the N-word or whatever other number of slurs in the past. That is of little relevance in this context. Same with Tucker. These two men are on the front lines leading the charge against this organized global effort to subjugate our politicians forever, to force us to continue funding these forever wars in the Middle East. That's what all of this comes down to at the end of the day. We can deal with Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson later. That doesn't really matter. You can take umbrage with the things that they've said, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that we are on the precipice of breaking through to a new era of American sovereignty. That's it. America first versus Israel first. We don't want to live in a society where we can be bullied, coerced, harassed by the ADL, by Right Wing Watch, by Media Matters, all the usual suspects, Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, whatever, where they can slander you and get you deplatformed by coercing tech millionaires. It's the most insane thing ever. And we saw what happened with Larry Ellison buying out TikTok and, making the chief moderator some guy who used to work for military intelligence in Israel. It's the most obvious and brazen thing I've ever seen in my life. It is ridiculous. We must regain our authority from this hostile global elite, this hostile Jewish organism, this creature. Once again, this has nothing to do with Jews. Let me make that very clear. I have no beef with Jews whatsoever. I never have. This is specifically about this coordinated, highly organized group of pro-Israel Jews and Zionists who are coercing our country into supporting their cause at our expense. That is all that matters. And we must fight against this until these people are defeated.